Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I'm hoping
Okay.
more people will come to our Zoom meeting today.
Yeah.
So we have a couple minutes before we get started.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you able to get on to Mastering Biology to do your work?
I tried it yesterday night and it still didn't let me.
Really?
Yeah.
I would recommend calling Help Desk.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be able to help you more because I've done everything on my end that I can do and I don't know what the
Okay.
problem is. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
But
okay.
it's 24-hour, I think it's 24/7 service, so you can call anytime. They should be able to
Mm-hmm.
help you.
Okay. I'm supposed to do it through Canvas, right?
Right, right. So use the link through Canvas to access Mastering Biology. Don't go directly to the website.
Mm-hmm.
That is a problem. If you go directly from the link that I've provided, it should take you to the right place. If it's not, then yeah, you need to call.
Because whenever I click on the link, it takes me to like the register section.
Mm-hmm.
Am I supposed to click like sign in like
Yes,
normal? Yes.
yes. So sign in and see what happens. You're talking about the initial sign in?
Yeah.
Yeah, do that and see if it will take you to the right course. Okay.
It takes me to um, my courses, and then it says Mastering Biology for biology, or yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I click on that, it just takes me to register for a class. I don't know. Like it says, please re-enter the course ID.
Okay, try that and see what happens.
Um, what's the course ID again? Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Let me find it real quick. Course home, my courses. Okay, course ID is UTT 79911.
Yeah, it's not letting me.
Okay, then you're going to need to call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't know. They may have some other suggestion that I don't know because they're the
Yeah, I'll call
experts.
them.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry, I can't do more.
No, it's okay.
Okay, let's see. There's 4 people here so far. It's 8 o'clock. We'll wait a couple more minutes, see if we get some more people in here,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll get started.
Yeah.
Somebody else. Yay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started just because I don't know how long it's going to take for people to join. But we are going to get started we're going to start with chapter 4. And go through this chapter. If we don't finish it today, then we'll finish it tomorrow because we have a Zoom meeting tomorrow on June 3. And in addition, I will answer questions, anything that comes up over your studying. It'll be a question and answer session tomorrow as well. And just as a reminder, tomorrow is your first exam. If you are still having trouble getting access to Mastering Biology, you need to access Canvas and talk to tech support. They should be able to help you. If there's still a problem after that, please let me know. This is just for everybody information. So quick question, can you see me when I'm talking or do you see the PowerPoint screen?
I see you.
You see me, do you see the PowerPoint screen?
No.
Oh no, okay, let me see. What do I need to do? Oh, there's still people in the waiting room. Women. Okay, hold on, there's people joining. Okay, share screen, that's what I needed to do. There we go. All right, now you see both?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so we're gonna do chapter 4 today as much as we can. And if we don't finish, as I said, we'll finish it tomorrow and talk about the chapter in the exam. Okay, so this chapter is chapter 4. It's about energy. And we're gonna talk about the basics of energy, and then we're going to talk about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. We are not going to go super in depth, so please don't get really concerned when you see some of these busy pictures. I'll point out the things that are important for you to know. Okay, so let's move on if it will let me. There you go. So this picture here, it's not in your book. This is just showing you an overview of what happens with cellular respiration. And there are 3 major stages to cellular respiration. You have glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and then the electron transport chain. We'll talk a little bit about each of those. That's coming up a little later in the chapter. So this is just kind of an overview. But the equation for photosynthesis you do need to know, which is O2 plus CH plus this is glucose, just so you know. So oxygen and glucose, you go through a chemical reaction, you end up with carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And this is energy in the form of ATP. So we'll talk about each of these steps a little bit. So don't get worried about this slide, please. Okay. So overview, living things use energy to power life. We use energy on a constant basis. All living things need energy to survive. So this is one of those basic characteristics of life, is that energy use, conversion, and expenditure. Oh, nice, okay. All right, so energy, the definition, energy is defined as the capacity to do work. And so, okay, so the ability, the capacity to do work, but how do we define energy? How do we make sense of it? So with that is another definition, work. Work is a force acting on something to make it move. So if you think about, let's say you have a pen on your table here and it's just lying there. If it's round, so it has the capacity to do work. If it has work force upon it, it's going to roll. So it has energy. It has, we'll talk about the type of energy it has. But if you want to make it roll on your desk, you have to put force on it with your finger to make it roll. So work is a force that makes something move. So anything makes it move. So to make more sense of this, we're going to talk about 2 definitions, kinetic energy and potential energy. So to illustrate this, we have this picture. This is on page 58. It looks like part of it's hidden there with a slide. But so if we look at this slide, this picture of a slide with kids on it and has stairs on one side. So the question is, does the slider at the top of the slide have energy? What would you say? Is there energy when you're standing at the top of the slide? Well, in this case, there is. It's in the form of potential energy. And this is based on where an object is and its location or its structure, its shape. So at the top of a slide, the child has a lot of potential energy because it has the ability to go down the slide. And when you go down the slide, you release energy. So there's a lot of potential energy standing at the top and very little at the bottom because you've used it up, sliding down. Okay, so you have a lot of potential energy at the top. When the slider goes down, he releases, or that energy is converted into kinetic energy, which is energy in motion. And that energy in motion is when the child is sliding down the slide. And when he gets to the bottom of the slide, his potential energy, his ability to do work is very low because he can't slide any further. But he can increase that by climbing back up the stairs, which is an expenditure of kinetic energy. Okay, my slide is being silly. Okay, so definition to remember, kinetic energy is energy in motion. So potential energy is when you're not moving, it's based on where you're located. Let's say there's a pin, I'm holding the pin up here. Does this pin have kinetic energy? What would you say? Anybody? I'm holding it up here. It has potential energy. It has the potential to release energy. If I let go, this pin is going to fall. So it has high potential energy based on its location, which is held up in the air with my finger. Its location gives it a high potential energy. If I release it and it falls, then it's converted to kinetic energy, which is energy in motion. Okay, so along with that idea, we can talk about potential energy in the form of chemical bonds. Okay, so there is a very important energy molecule, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. We talk about ATP all the time. This is the most used energy molecule in the body. And with ATP, the T stands for triphosphate. So there are basically 3 phosphates, if I can draw this, 3 phosphates, and those lines represent bonds, okay? That bond between the second and third phosphate is a very high energy bond. It has a lot of potential energy. So I'm sorry, I don't know how to erase that. So when you break that bond between the second and third phosphate, it releases energy that's used to drive other processes in the cell. So that bond has a high potential energy. When it's broken, releases energy. So that's kind of the important part about ATP. And the other part is ATP is recyclable. You can add that phosphate back on and create that high energy bond. It takes energy to do that, but you can recycle ATP so it's used over and over and over again. Okay, so if that high energy bond between the second and third phosphate is broken, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which is the low energy molecule. And so, as I mentioned before, it goes through a constant recycling process. And so ATP is always is constantly reused. It's not used up and destroyed, it's recycled. So the whole recycle process is just building up and breaking bonds over and over again. So this illustration is on page 58 down at the bottom. And it shows you ATP. Here are 3 phosphate bonds. And that bond here between the second and third phosphate is where that high energy bond is. Okay, talking about energy a little bit more, keep that stuff in mind about ATP. So some important definitions about energy or some important rules. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. This is a law. Cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be converted from one form to another. So it can be converted from potential energy to kinetic energy, for example. But there are other ways it can be converted as well. This illustration is on page 59, if you're following along in the book. And it shows you some ways that energy is converted in a living organism. So if we look at this chameleon, I think it's a chameleon. I don't know. It's a lizard. We'll go with that, with the lizard. So energy from the sunlight comes in, warms the lizard. That warmth can be converted to chemical energy used to catch an insect. So it's converted from heat into chemical energy, into ATP, for example. Bodies give off energy in the form of heat. Chemical energy comes in the form of food. So energy comes in and is converted in many different forms and can be released, can be used, can be expelled as heat, can be used as body movement to catch an insect. That insect provides chemical energy, which then provides energy in the body. Some of it's released as heat and some of it can be used for other functions. So energy is really important because never created or destroyed. It can be converted. Okay. I forgot about those things. All right. So one of the conversions, heat being given off. So heat is a byproduct of energy conversion. A lot of energy is lost as heat in our bodies, for example. So quick question, after doing 100 jumping jacks, would you feel warm or cold? What would you guys say?
Warm.
Yeah, I knew somebody would answer. Yeah, you're gonna feel warm. You're gonna be heated up because you just did 100 jumping jacks. Well, so each time you're doing these exercises, you're releasing chemical energy is being released as heat. And so some of that energy you're using is released as heat from your body. Okay, so second law of conservation of energy. With each energy conversion, systems tend to move forward in a more disorderly state. So this is talking about entropy. So through all of these conversions, you're not creating more order. Things are becoming more disordered or less structured. So let's see, how can I say this? So when heat is generated and released, you're increasing your entropy or the level of disorder in the system. So things don't naturally go to more orderly levels. They naturally become more disordered with energy. So just try to keep that in mind. So entropy, the idea of entropy is really important. It's how much disorder is in a system. And every system has disorder. Heat is released, entropy is increased, but there are other systems in place that create order. But entropy is how much disorder is in the system. So, question, if things naturally become more disordered, why don't living systems like ecosystems or organisms fall into disorder? Any ideas? Well, living organisms, living systems, or ecosystems do not fall into complete disorder because they actually put in energy to create order. So they're, for example, all this chemical reactions that are happening in our body are creating order, taking energy to create order and have a very regulated system going on. So it takes energy to do that. So they don't go to complete disorder because they are putting energy into the system to create order. Some heat is released and that increases entropy, but the organism itself does not become disordered. It just releases heat to the environment. So because you put energy into the system or into the organism, it creates order in that system while still increasing the entropy outside the system. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so moving on, kind of a broad idea, what is the source of energy for nearly all life on Earth? All of our energy basically comes from the sun. Okay, so plants and animals all get their energy ultimately from the sun. So question, what do plants, oh, I already answered that question, never mind. So what do plants and animals have in common in terms of energy acquisition? They're getting their energy from the sun. How are plants different than animals? Can you think of a way in terms of how they get their energy? How are animals, for example, different than plants? Do they all get their energy the same way? What would you say? You guys always feel free to answer. Okay. Plants get their energy directly from the sun, while animals eat the plants. And so they're getting the energy indirectly from the sun because they're eating the plants that got the energy from the sun. So plants are kind of getting it indirectly, going through an intermediate step of eating the plants that got the original energy from the sun. So that's kind of the big difference between plants and animals. Plants are considered consumers. Plants are considered producers because they do get their energy directly from the sun, while animals are considered consumers because they eat the producers and get that energy indirectly from the sun. Okay, so talking about solar energy and moving into ATP and photosynthesis. Okay, solar energy, very important. It's a nice sunny day today. I'm happy about my garden. It's getting nice sunlight. This is directly related to photosynthesis. So solar energy is inputted daily. And I'll probably talk about my garden all the time because I'm really excited about it. We have some good tomatoes this year. Okay, sunlight is the ultimate source of energy. That energy is inputted on a daily basis and it's converted into a chemical form that can be used. So energy, we would say, flows through the system. It's converted in the system from one form to another. It's not created or destroyed, it flows through it and it's converted. So this illustration here you can find on 60 and 61. This is just showing the basic energy conversion between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So this is photosynthesis. Sorry about my handwriting. This is photosynthesis on this side, and this is cellular respiration. Oh, terrible handwriting. Sorry, guys. You be glad I'm not writing on the board. So photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide and water. You have the energy of the sunlight, you have a chemical reaction, and you produce sugar and oxygen as a byproduct. Great. That's where we get our nutrition from plants, is essentially the sugars that are produced. Cellular respiration is a separate reaction, and it takes sugar and oxygen to make that reaction run. You take sugar and oxygen, go through cellular respiration, and your products are ATP, water, and carbon dioxide. in cellular respiration. ATP is used by cellular systems to run reactions, to give energy, etc. But if you look at this, the interaction between photosynthesis and cellular respiration, they're opposites of each other, okay? So, for example, the waste products of photosynthesis, or the products of photosynthesis, sugar and oxygen, those are the reactants for cellular respiration. So they're complete opposites of each other. They cycle between the two forms. So energy is converted, not created or destroyed, but it's converted and flows through the system, being converted from one form to another. Okay, a little bit about producers and consumers. I got ahead of myself earlier, sorry. Producers absorb the sun's energy and they convert it into chemical energy. And the form of chemical energy that they are converting it into in photosynthesis is glucose. Glucose is C6H12O6. That's the form of chemical energy that is produced. That gives the plants the ability to make their own food. So when we have a garden, for example, what are the major components? We need sunlight, we need water, we have good soil, maybe some fertilizer, and you get amazing plants because they produce their own food. All they need is carbon dioxide and sunlight and water, carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water, and you're able to go through this photosynthetic reaction and create glucose. Okay, sorry. All right. Consumers, on the other hand, get their energy by eating producers. So we are consumers. We, whatever you eat, whether it's meat or plants, you are a consumer. You're eating, if you're eating a plant, you're eating a producer. If you're eating meat, you're eating another consumer. And so the amount of energy you get directly from the sunlight is reduced by how far you're separated from that original producer, if that makes sense. So we are all consumers. I am a vegetarian, so I eat producers. So I get my energy indirectly from the sunlight from producers. If you eat meat, it's just one step further away. Okay, all right. Talking a little bit more about photosynthesis. Producers capture solar energy and convert it into chemical energy. And that what that product is sugar. So converting solar energy into chemical energy is what's happening in photosynthesis. Important to kind of have a broad understanding of what's happening in photosynthesis. Okay, you need to know the overall reaction for photosynthesis. I would be likely to ask a question, what is the reaction for photosynthesis, or what is the reaction for cellular respiration? So if you know one, you know the other because they're opposites. So please make sure you remember that. So we have our overall reaction here. Carbon dioxide and water and sunlight go through photosynthesis. Your end products are sugar and oxygen. So if you think about it, the gas that's going in is carbon dioxide. So plants are essentially breathing carbon dioxide. They need carbon dioxide and they give off oxygen. We need oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. We're doing cellular respiration, which is the opposite of photosynthesis. So if you understand one, you should have a pretty good understanding of the other. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of what's going on. Photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplasts. These are little organelles in plant cells or algae. And these chloroplasts, this is where it's happening, and they produce oxygen as a byproduct. So the trees outside my garden, all of the living green plants are giving off oxygen as a byproduct. So they contribute to the amount of oxygen in our system. Oh, sorry, my dog is barking in his sleep. It's really cute. Sorry if you can hear it. Okay, So thinking about past history, the Earth's atmosphere was low in oxygen prior to photosynthesis. When photosynthesis started to occur, you build up the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. So having enough green plants, trees around is really important to the amount of oxygen we have, and very important to how much carbon dioxide is taken out of the atmosphere, which is probably one reason why we want to make sure we take care of or pay attention to our carbon footprint and how much carbon dioxide we're putting into the atmosphere and how much trees are being destroyed by rainforests, for example. Those are really important to take out the carbon dioxide in the system. Okay, sorry, I got off track. Okay, so moving on. Photosynthesis converts solar energy into chemical energy. That form of chemical energy, so you remember C6H12O6, are sugar, glucose. So both producers and consumers are only able to release chemical energy through cellular respiration. So both plants and animals have to go through cellular respiration to release the chemical energy. So plants produce chemical energy, which is sugar, glucose, but it can't unlock the energy in glucose until it goes through the process of cellular respiration. So plants undergo photosynthesis and cellular respiration, while animals only go through cellular respiration because they can't photosynthesize. So cellular respiration is necessary to release that chemical energy. Okay, so in cellular respiration, you break those bonds and you convert that chemical energy from sugar into ATP. So when that happens, the kinetic energy that's inherent in those bonds can be used for work. Okay, talking about ATP again, important molecule for you to remember, high energy storage molecule. This is where you get most of your cellular energy. This is the main energy molecule of choice. There's another molecule that's involved in photosynthesis, and that's called NADH or NADPH. And these two molecules are hydrogen ion and electron carrier molecules. So, for example, if we look at this equation right here, we have NAD plus 2 hydrogen ions plus 2 electrons. So you're carrying hydrogen ions and electron ions. So it accepts the hydrogen and it accepts the electron because it's attracted to that positive charge. And that hydrogen and the electrons are used later in the process of photosynthesis. So they're used later in photosynthesis. So this will come up again, and we'll talk more about electrons and hydrogen ions. So NADPH is similar. It's a hydrogen ion or electron carrier. So they're just variants of each other. And then there's another molecule, FADH2. It carries electrons and hydrogens again. Same idea. All it's doing is carrying hydrogens and electrons. Those are used to fuel a different part of photosynthesis. So that will come up again. Okay, this is just showing the cycle for ATP. I'm trying to see if there's a picture for you in the book. No. Okay, so this is just showing you the recycling of ATP from ADP. So if we start here, we have our 3 phosphate bonds. Our bond here between our second and third phosphate is a high energy bond. When you break that bond, you release energy. And then what you're left with is ADP, adenosine diphosphate. When you put energy into the system from food, for example, and you have phosphates, you're able to reform that bond and recycle the ADP into ATP. Okay, this is just showing the NADH cycle. And just as I showed you before, this is a hydrogen ion carrier and electron carrier. And there's two reactions. There's the oxidation reaction and a reduction reaction. So in oxidation, you give off 2 electrons and 2 hydrogen ions. That leaves you with NAD+, the positive. In reduction, you're reducing that positive charge. You add 2 hydrogens and 2 electrons, and you're back to NADH plus hydrogen. This will all come into play as we continue to talk, but just remember the overall idea is that NADH is hydrogen carrier and an electron carrier. Okay, where does photosynthesis take place? Oh, by the way, if we get cut off, I will put up a new link right away and we'll continue on with lecture. So if we do get cut off, please make sure to check announcements and sign back in, just in case. I tried to make sure it was long enough. If it cuts us off, please don't just go away. I will continue on with lecture. Okay. So where does photosynthesis take place? It takes place in the organelles, in the chloroplasts, which are the little green sacs you'd find inside a cell, plant cells. So ultimately, photosynthesis is the process that provides food to nearly all life on Earth. So photosynthesis is incredibly important because all of our energy on Earth is ultimately obtained from photosynthesis. Okay, an overview. So the inputs for photosynthesis, what do we need to make that reaction run? We need water, and we need carbon dioxide, and we need sunlight. Okay, so the two big ones that we can control, kind of, water and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide enters the plant through these little pores on the bottom of their leaves. So on the bottom of their leaves, they have these little pores called stoma or stomata. And carbon dioxide enters into the plant through these little pores on the bottom of the leaf, and it's able to do its reaction. Oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis, and it leaves the plant through those stomata. So the plant's essentially breathing through these little pores on the underside of its leaf. And that picture's on 62 if you want to look at it. Okay, looking closer, we're looking at the looking at the chloroplast. There is a lot of membranes, and there's little stacked membranes called thylakoids. They look like little pancakes. The thylakoids are all stacked up, and a stack of thylakoids is called a granum. And inside the chloroplast, you have fluid. The fluid is called stroma. You should know that what that word is. And note that the membrane that holds chloroplast is of double membrane. Okay, so these thylakoid membranes, these stacks of thylakoids, this is where photosynthesis is occurring. Okay, why are plants green? Chlorophyll is a pigment. It's the primary pigment in photosynthetic organisms, and you find this in the chloroplast. So light in the blue and violet and the orange and red ranges is absorbed by the chloroplast. Light in the green and yellow range is reflected, and so that's what we see. The colors that are absorbed we cannot see, the colors that are reflected we can. So we're reflecting yellow and green, we'll be able to see those colors. Okay, overall reaction. Again, you must know the overall reaction, and it's also an opposite of cellular respiration, so remembering that. Okay, photosynthesis captures the sunlight energy and stores it into bonds of sugar. So it's stored in sugar molecules. Okay. So there are two sets of reactions in photosynthesis. There's the light reactions, and then there's the dark reactions. So we're going to talk about both of those. So in the light reactions or light dependent reactions, you're capturing the sunlight and storing it as sugar in those high energy molecules. This relies on the sun to do. This is the